Ever get that feeling?
Yeah.
Like the more you understand about the world, the heavier it feels.
Yeah.
It's like, the more you learn, the more complicated everything seems. And not always in a good way.
Right.
Kind of unsettling, almost. Like maybe knowledge isn't always the straightforward good thing we're told it is.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all felt that at some point.
That's exactly what we're going to dig into today. This idea, could it be that intelligence is kind of a double-edged sword?
Yeah, I like that. A double-edged sword. That's a great way to put it.
And to help us explore this, we're turning to the work of a philosopher who definitely wasn't afraid to think about the darker sides of things, Arthur Schopenhauer.
Okay, Schopenhauer. Now, he's not exactly known for being cheerful.
Definitely not the life of the party.
But he had some really sharp insights about knowledge and happiness. Insights that I think are more relevant now than ever.
So consider this your crash course in Schopenhauer's thinking without having to wade through all the, dense philosophical texts yourself.
Yeah, we'll do the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. So the core question Schopenhauer wrestled with, and what we're going to tackle with you today, is this. If simplicity often equals happiness, is it actually better to be super insightful, even if it means carrying this, heavier burden of awareness?
Right. Or is there something to be said for maybe a little blissful ignorance?
Schopenhauer's answer is definitely not what you'd expect.
He wouldn't be Schopenhauer if it was.
True that. Okay, so first things first. What did Schopenhauer see as the downside of intelligence? Well, he famously described it as acting like a magnifying glass for life's suffering.
A magnifying glass. That's such a vivid image.
Isn't it? It's like you suddenly see all these flaws and cracks in the world that everyone else seems to just gloss over.
And you can't unsee them.
Exactly. Like you're noticing all the imperfections in a painting that everyone else is admiring.
Yeah, I get that. Makes you wonder if that sharper focus, that heightened awareness is almost an unavoidable part of being intelligent.
And Schopenhauer actually went deeper into why that might be. Let's start with the social dimension.
Okay, social interaction. How do those play into this?
Well, Schopenhauer argued that intelligent folks often feel a sense of isolation, even in a crowd.
Makes sense if you see through the shallowness of a lot of everyday conversations.
Right. And the, pointless routines and rituals, all that artificiality that we just sort of accept.
It's like you're an anthropologist observing a foreign culture.
Exactly. Have you ever felt that way?
Yeah.
Like a bit of an outsider?
Oh, definitely. You're watching everyone else play a game that you understand but don't really want to participate.
Then there's the big existential question. Schopenhauer said that intelligence brings with it this heightened awareness of life's mysteries.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of it all? What's our purpose? Why are we here?
The big questions, yeah.
And for a lot of people, traditional answers like religion or societal norms, those provide comfort.
Right, they give a framework.
But Schopenhauer argued that a more inquisitive mind might find those answers insufficient.
Even comforting illusions.
Yeah, like something's not quite adding up.
So it's this tension, right? The need for meaning, but also the intelligence to question everything.
And it can be tough to reconcile those two.
It definitely makes you think about how we find meaning in life, especially when easy answers don't seem to cut it anymore.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the intellectual stuff either. Schopenhauer was really tuned in to the emotional side of things.
With feelings, right?
Yeah. He believed that intelligent people often have a kind of amplified emotional experience.
More sensitive, you mean?
Exactly. It's like they experience everything in high definition.
Both the good and the bad.
Right. So they might feel joy more deeply, but they might also feel pain more acutely. And not just that, but they might analyze it, overthink it, remember it more vividly.
Wow, that's a lot to process. So is that like a trade-off then? More capacity for joy, but also more vulnerability to suffering?
That's a really good question. And it's something Schopenhauer definitely grappled with.
It makes you wonder if there's a way to cultivate that sensitivity, to harness the good parts while maybe minimizing the downs.
I think that's a lifelong challenge for a lot of us. But here's where Schopenhauer takes a surprising turn.
A turn. After all that.
I know, right? But despite his, generally pessimistic view of things, he wasn't entirely hopeless.
There's a glimmer of light.
Exactly. He actually believed that the very intelligence that can cause us so much suffering also holds the potential to free us from it.
Wait, so the problem contains its own solution?
In a way, yeah. Schopenhauer was all about understanding the root causes of our suffering. And one of the biggest culprits, he believed, was our constant craving for things, our desires.
Makes sense. We're always wanting something. More money, a better job, recognition, love.
Exactly. And Schopenhauer argued that by understanding the nature of our desires, by seeing through their often illusory nature, we can actually weaken their hold on it.
Oh, that's interesting. Reminds me of some Eastern philosophies, like Buddhism. They talk about detachment from desires as a path to enlightenment.
It's a very similar idea, actually. Schopenhauer, coming from a Western philosophical tradition, arrives at a very similar conclusion.
So how does this work? How does intelligence actually become this tool for liberation?
Well, Schopenhauer laid out some specific practices. One of them was what he called aesthetic contemplation, basically immersing yourself in art, music, philosophy.
Wait, so just enjoying beautiful things can help us overcome suffering?
It's not quite that simple, but Schopenhauer believed that these experiences can provide a kind of temporary escape from our everyday worries and desires.
Like a mental...
Kind of.
Yeah.
When you're totally absorbed in a piece of music, for example, your worries and anxieties just sort of fade away.
You're fully present in the moment.
Right. It's a glimpse of a more pure, less self-centered form of awareness.
I can definitely relate to that. Getting lost in a good book or a beautiful piece of music. It's like stepping outside of yourself for a while.
Exactly. Another practice Schopenhauer emphasized was cultivating detachment.
Detachment. Doesn't that sound a bit cold, like not caring about anything?
He actually clarified that he meant a warm detachment.
A warm detachment. What does that even mean?
It's more like becoming a wise observer. It's about being able to engage with life without being totally consumed by its ups and downs.
So not letting your emotions run wild.
Right. It's about recognizing that everything is impermanent,
Yeah.
Joy and sorrow come and go.
But that's okay.
Exactly. It's about developing a deeper understanding of the way life works and learning to ride the wave.
That sounds really challenging, though. How do we actually cultivate that kind of perspective?
It takes practice, for sure.
Okay.
It's about learning to observe your own thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Definitely. And the third element Schopenhauer talked about was developing compassion.
Compassion. But I thought we were talking about becoming more detached.
It might seem counterintuitive, but Schopenhauer believed that recognizing the universality of suffering could actually help us lessen our own.
Wait, so understanding that everyone's struggling in some way can actually make us feel better.
That was his idea. He argued that it can foster a sense of connection rather than isolation.
Because we're all in this together.
Exactly. When you realize that everyone in their own way is going through something, it can make your own struggles feel less overwhelmed.
So our intelligence can become a bridge rather than a barrier.
I like that. A bridge. It all comes back to how we choose to use our intelligence, doesn't it?
It's a tool.
Right. And Schopenhauer believed that, like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
Like a powerful microscope. It can reveal amazing things or terrifying.
Exactly. The key is not to avoid looking through the microscope, but to learn how to interpret what we see with wisdom and clarity.
To choose where we focus that powerful lens.
And here's the really interesting part. Schopenhauer suggested that while intelligence might initially expose the emptiness behind a lot of our superficial pursuits, it can also lead us to a much deeper kind of fulfillment.
So it's not just about seeing the bad stuff. It's about finding meaning in spite of it.
Exactly. It's about facing the complexities of life with open eyes and finding a way to live meaningfully within those complexities.
That's where the real challenge lies, I think. Not in ignoring the hard stuff, but in confronting it and finding our own way through it.
And that's where we see a kind of, hidden optimism in Schopenhauer's thinking.
Hidden optimism from the guy who said the world is driven by a blind, insatiable will.
I know, right? But even though he saw all the darkness, he also gave us the tools to navigate it. Philosophical contemplation, art, understanding. These things can help us find our way through the shadows.
So maybe this curse of intelligence isn't a curse at all. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise.
Maybe it's the key to a more honest, more authentic, more meaningful engagement with life.
It forces us to confront the big question, to wrestle with the difficult truth.
And in doing so, maybe we find something more profound than simple happiness.
A kind of hard-won wisdom that can only come from facing the dark.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Schopenhauer's ideas, here's the question I want to leave you with. How will you choose to use your own intelligence?
Will you let it weigh you down, or will you use it to lift yourself up?
Will you let it become a source of anxiety and overwhelm, or will you turn it into a tool for understanding, for growth, for finding your own unique path in the world?
The choice.
And that choice, I think, will shape not only how you experience the world, but who you become.
It's about taking these ideas and really thinking about how they apply to your own life, to your own experience.
Because that's what this is all about, right? Not just accumulating knowledge, but transforming it into wisdom.
Into something that can guide us, inspire us, and ultimately help us live richer, more meaningful lives.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.